This is the skin of a killer, Bill.
Vampires. They're not just some of the best-known creatures in monster lore, they're arguably among the oldest. But when it comes to defining what makes a vampire, the answer is actually more complicated than just, they drink blood. Welcome to the Revelations Room, and today we're diving deep into the history and evolution of vampires, from ancient blood-sucking spirits to Dracula and even the infamous sparkly vampires of Twilight. We're going to answer some big questions, like how the vampire we know today came to be, and why Hollywood just can't get enough of them. Pale humans who feed on blood for living prompt us to ask, where did vampires come from? The myths and origin. Vampires are so rooted in culture that it's strange to imagine a time before their myth, but how have they evolved? We explore vampire history, defining vampire as a human who died, returned with a thirst for blood, and spread vampirism by consuming others' blood. Ancient Mesopotamian folklore, for example, introduces Lilitu, female demons with a hunger for blood, especially that of infants, resembling later vampire lore. Other cultures tell of similar bloodthirsty beings, the Greek Lamia who preyed on children, or the terrifying deeds of Vlad the Impaler and Elizabeth Bathory, both known for alleged vampiric actions that influenced Bram Stoker's Dracula. Gothic literature embraced vampires, reflecting themes of fear, forbidden romance and moral decay. These portrayals shaped the vampire as we know it, a seductive, dangerous nobleman, complexly layered with political and social allegories. Vampires before Dracula. The Eastern European folklore vampire is a sharp contrast to Hollywood's portrayal. Unlike the aristocratic count, the folkloric vampire is often dark, bloated, and lacks the iconic fangs. Folklore suggests that vampires are prematurely dead individuals who return to bring misfortune. Differences include folkloric vampires bite the chest rather than the neck, with stakes and decapitation among the traditional methods to ensure peace in death. In cases like those of Peter Plagojewicz in 1725 or Arnold Powell in Serbia, belief in vampiric figures led to exhumations, and bodies were found to be suspiciously preserved and bloodied. Such tales spreaded, sparking fear and fascination throughout Europe. Some viewed these stories with skepticism, while others feared vampiric infection and sought church-sanctioned methods to eliminate them. Such beliefs led to numerous rituals, such as exhuming bodies suspected of vampirism and conducting ceremonies to ensure the dead did not rise to harm the living. The evolution of vampires in pop culture. Moving into the 20th century, Dracula set a precedent that turned vampires into fanged aristocrats. By the 1930s, capes were added to the vampire look for drama on stage. Fangs became the go-to weapon, and the coffin became their permanent shelter.
Bleeding me dry like a goddamn vampire.
But today, modern vampires are less about plagues and more about charisma and questionable fashion choices. Just look at the Twilight series, where vampires got a massive makeover, from Dracula's decay to Edward's sparkles, introducing us to a new kind of vampire, the brooding teen. Cinema further solidified vampires in popular culture, from Nosferatu to Universal Studios' Dracula, where Bela Lugosi's iconic portrayal set a visual standard for the beginning vampire lore. Meanwhile, shows like Supernatural and movies like The Lost Boys reflect darker themes, moral dilemmas, curses, and eternal loneliness. According to Pope, desire for eternal youth is delusional. We're obsessed with vampires because they're both human and monster, cursed to live forever but never truly free. Nosferatu versus Dracula. Nosferatu, 1922, directed by F.W. Murnau's film, holds a dark charm that explores societal fears of the other. Count Orlok's appearance, with his skeletal form and bat-like features, disturbed early 20th century anxieties in Europe, blending social commentary with authentic visuals. As the first film to portray vampires vanishing in sunlight, it set the dark, shadowy aesthetic for future horror films. Unlike the refined Dracula, 1931, which introduced Bela Lugosi's charismatic, gothic vibe, Nosferatu relies on raw, silent horror for its impact. Its haunting power compounded by Max Schreck's intense performance, so convincing some thought he was a real vampire, gives it an unmatched genuineness. Nosferatu faced significant legal issues shortly after its release. Florence Stoker, widow of Dracula author Bram Stoker, won a lawsuit against the filmmakers for copyright violation, resulting in a court order to destroy most copies of the film. However, a few survived, ensuring Nosferatu's legacy. 78 years later, the satirical remake Shadow of the Vampire explores the making of the 1922 classic Nosferatu with a brilliant twist. It casts Max Schreck, the actor who played Count Orlok, as an actual vampire. This meta-horror film is significant for its blend of historical context and supernatural storytelling, turning the silent atmosphere of Nosferatu into a modern exploration of obsession, sacrifice, and the dark side of filmmaking. Willem Dafoe's portrayal of Schreck adds depth and body humour, highlighting themes of immortality and the limits artists go to for art or science. The fear of vampires likely arose from misunderstood symptoms of diseases like tuberculosis or plague, which were outrageous when vampires were believed to wander. As science advanced, vampires transitioned into literary icons, with works like Polidori's The Vampire and Stoker's Dracula moulding the vampire into a darkly romantic figure. This transformation reflected a shift from superstition to metaphor, as vampires became symbols of desire, sin, and the predator. What is so attractive about vampires? Vampires are versatile for a reason. They've served as metaphors for disease, capitalism, and the fear of others, but they're also symbols of rebellion. Every time vampires get a glow-up, it's like a pulse check on society, what we're scared of, who we sympathise with, and what we find attractive. And this is why we keep coming back to vampires. They're monsters we love to reinvent, either as seductive heroes or relentless, terrifying forces. Vampires have evolved from chilling folklore to seductive icons, with each era turning new shadows on their mystique. While we could go on about legendary tales from Dracula to Twilight, there are countless other vampire stories reimagining these fascinating creatures. Hungry for more dark and thrilling bloody tales? Then let us know your favourite vampire anything. Share your favourite films, myths, and legends in the comment section. Together we can dive into even deeper layers of vampire lore, from ancient myths to modern classics that continue to haunt and captivate across the centuries. Like and subscribe.